Welcome to the final offering from my Simplified and Abridged version of The Perfect Way. This last reading is from the opening pages of the 9th lecture, which is entitled God as the Lord, or the Divine Image. All sacred books, whatever their origin, are agreed in representing the deity in two apparently opposite and antagonistic ways. According to one of these, the divine being is eternal, universal, diffused, unformulated, indefinable, and altogether inaccessible and beyond perception. According to the other, the divine being is near, particular, definite, formulated, personified, discernible, and readily accessible. Thus, on the one hand, it is said that God is the high and holy one that inhabits eternity and is unknowable, that no one has seen God at any time or heard God's voice or can see God and live. And on the other hand, it is declared that God has been heard and seen face to face and is near all who call upon God, being within their hearts. And that the knowledge of God is not only the one knowledge worth having, but that it is open to all who seek it, and the pure in heart are promised as their supreme reward that they shall see God. Numerous instances besides are recorded of actual conscious visions of God, as among the Hebrew prophets. For example, Isaiah says that he saw the Lord high and lifted up. Ezekiel, that he saw the glory of the God of Israel as a figure of fire. Daniel, that he saw God as a human form enthroned in flame. And John records a similar vision in the Apocalypse. The writers of the book of Exodus show their awareness of such experiences by attributing the vision not only to Moses, but to the whole of the elders and leaders of Israel, in all 74 persons. The sight of the God of Israel on this occasion is described as like that of a devouring fire. Among similar experiences related in other scriptures is that in the Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord Krishna reveals to the gaze of Arjuna his supreme and heavenly form, shining on all sides with light immeasurable, like the sun 1,000-fold, and containing in his breast all the gods or powers, masculine and feminine, of the universe. Yet, in spite of the difference between the two natures as described, the scriptures regard both as belonging to one and the same divine being, and combining the names characteristic of both, declare that the Lord is God and God is the Lord, and lay down the compound term Lord God as the proper designation of deity. Besides the title Lord, a great variety of names are applied to deity under this mode. In the Jewish and Christian scriptures, these names are Jehovah, El Shaddai, the Logos, the Ancient of Days, Alpha and Omega, Son of God, the Only Begotten, Adonai. The Hindus have Brahma and also Ardhanari, identical with Adonai. The Persians have Ormuzd, the Egyptians Ra, or the sun. The Greeks, the Demiurgos. The Kabbalah has Adam Kadmon, and some later mystics employ the term Grand Man. The most notable of these later mystics, Emmanuel Swedenborg, asserts the vision to be a fact in respect of the angels, claimed by him as his informants, saying that the Lord is God manifested in the universe as a man, and is seen in this way with interior vision by the angels. Swedenborg, however, identifies the Lord who is thus discerned with the historical Jesus, maintaining the latter to be none other than deity, Jehovah in person, who assumed a body of flesh and manifested himself as a man in order to save mankind from hell, and commanded his disciples to call him Lord. Swedenborg here falls into the common error of confusing our Lord with the Lord, the Christ in the man with Adonai in the heavens, the former being the counterpart of the latter. This error is due to Swedenborg's failure to recognize the distinction between the manifest and the unmanifest, and between the microcosmic and the macrocosmic deity. In the Lord, the formless assumes a form, the nameless a name, the infinite the definite, and these human. But although the Lord is God manifested as a man in and to the souls of those who are granted the vision, it is not as man in the exclusive sense of the term and masculine only, but as man, both masculine and feminine, at once man and woman, as is humanity itself. The Lord is God manifested in substance and is dual in form because deity, though one in essence and statically, is twofold in operation or dynamically. And the vision of deity under a definite form, dual and human or androgynous, though not as ordinarily understood, has been universal and persistent from the beginning. And this not as a conception merely mental and subjective, but as a perception objective to an interior faculty, in that it is actually seen. It follows that in terms used to denote deity, both sexes are expressed or implied. And where one sex only is designated, it is not because the other is lacking, but because it is hidden. It follows also that in order to be made in the image of God, the individual must comprise within himself the masculine and feminine qualities of existence and be spiritually both man and woman. Man is perfect only when the whole humanity is manifested in him, and this occurs only when the whole spirit of humanity, that is God, is manifested through him. In manifesting himself in this way, God, as the book of Genesis says, creates man in his own image, male and female. This is the doctrine of all Hermetic scriptures. And when it is said, as of the Kabbalah, that these scriptures were handed down by God, first of all to Adam in paradise, and then to Moses on Sinai, the meaning intended is that the doctrine contained in them is that which man always discerns when he succeeds in attaining the inner and celestial region of the nature where he is taught directly by his own divine spirit and knows just as he is known. The attainment of this divine knowledge is what makes existence a paradise, and it is symbolized by the ascent of a mountain variously designated Nissa, Sinai, Zion, Olivet. The power to receive this knowledge is not exclusive to any particular period or place, but depends entirely on condition. And the condition is that of the understanding. Man attains the image of God to the extent that he comprehends the nature of God. Such knowledge constitutes of itself transmutation, since man is what he knows, and he knows only what he is. Therefore, the recognition first of God as the Lord, and next of the Lord as the divine humanity, is at one and the same time the means of salvation and salvation itself. This is the truth which sets free, the supreme mystery called by Paul the mystery of godliness. And it is through their relegation of this mystery to the category of the incomprehensible that the priesthoods have barred to man the way to redemption. True, they have directed him to a macrocosmic God whose being is exterior to man, whose nature is completely different from man's, and whose heaven is remote and inaccessible. But they have suppressed completely the microcosmic God and the kingdom within, and have blotted the Lord and his true image out of all recognition. Now, the main distinction between one who is not an initiate and one who is, and between one who does not know and one who does, lies in this. For the one, God, if having being at all, is wholly without. For the other, God, if God is both within and without. And the God within is all that the God without is. It cannot be too emphatically stated that the definition which explains mystery as something that is inconsistent with or contradicts sense and reason is wrong and exceedingly harmful. It is, in its true sense, mystery denotes only that which belongs to the region which is beyond the scope of the external sense and reason. It is thus the doctrine of spirit and of the experiences connected with spirit. And since the spiritual is the inner and source of the outer, it follows that far from any doctrine of spirit contradicting and nullifying the experiences and conclusions of the external faculties, it rather corrects and interprets them, precisely as reason corrects and interprets the sensible impression of the earth's immobility and of the daily revolution of the skies. Therefore, the degradation of the term mystery to mean something incomprehensible is really little other than an indicator of the loss of the faculty of comprehension by the priesthoods. Falling away through idolatry from the standard once attained by them, and losing the power either to discern or to interpret substance, the church has abandoned the true definition of mystery, which referred to things transcending the outer sense and reason, and adopted a definition implying something that contradicted all sense and reason. From then onwards, far from fulfilling their proper function of supplying man with the wholesome bread of a perfect system of thought, they gave him instead the indigestible stones of totally unreasonable dogmas, and in place of the fish or interior mysteries of the soul, they gave him the serpents or illusory emanations of the astral. Reduced by this act to a choice between the suicide of an absolute surrender of the reason and open revolt, the world both rightly and of necessity adopted the lesser of the two evils, because man neither ought if he could, nor can if he would, suppress his reason. And now the churches, having lost the knowledge of spirit and suppressed the faculty by which alone it could be attained, are absolutely without a system of thought with which to oppose the progress of that fatal system of no thought, which is fast engulfing the world. And so profound is the despair which reigns even in the highest ranks of the church, that recently one of its most distinguished members, Cardinal Newman, had to confess confess that he saw no hope for religion except in a new revelation. Here we need to give a brief explanation of the ancient and true doctrine regarding the place and value of the understanding in religious matters, as this will both further promote the rehabilitation of this supreme faculty and show the extent to which the priesthood has departed from the right course. Mention has already been made of Hermes as the trainer of the Christs. This phrase is comparable with those more familiar phrases which describe Christ as the son of David and as the seed of the woman, and is, in short, similar to all statements about the genealogy of the Christ, including the declaration that the rock on which the Church of Christ is built is the understanding. Because the meaning of all such statements is that the doctrine represented by the term Christ, far from being a mystery in the priestly sense, is a necessary and self-evident truth, requiring for its discernment as such only the full and free exercise of thought. Now, this term thought is no other than the name of the Egyptian equivalent of Hermes, the god Thought, frequently written Thoth, these being for the Greeks and Egyptians respectively the divine intelligence in its dynamic condition. It has already been said that in the celestial all properties and qualities are persons, the fact being that it is always in the guise of a person that the divine spirit of an individual communicates with him, the form adopted on the occasion corresponding to the function to be exercised. Thoth and Hermes are thus names expressive of the personality assumed by the supreme nous or mind of the microcosm when operating especially as the intelligence or understanding. In different nations, while the function is the same, the name and form vary according to the genius of the people. So to a Hebrew, the same spirit becomes manifest as Raphael. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Being, speaking as the Lord, that is Krishna, declares that he himself is the spirit of understanding. As the parent spirit, the nous or divine mind, is God, so the product, thought, or the word, as a son of God, is also God. Nor does the divine procession cease at the first generation, for considering that Christ is the manifestation in ultimates of such divine word, the Christ also is Son of God and therefore God. But no less, however, is Christ the Son of David, though not by physical descent, but in a spiritual sense. Like the patriarchs, who were for that reason said to keep concubines, David was not married to the Spirit, but held only occasional communion with it, thus limiting the degree of illumination he attained. Christ implies full regeneration and illumination. The attainment of this state is the ultimate aim of the Hermetic and alchemic science, the earliest formulation of which is ascribed to the god Thoth, the Egyptian equivalent for the divine thought. One of the most commonly encountered symbols of the understanding and its importance in the work of regeneration has always been the ram. This accounts for the frequent portrayal of the representatives of Hermes and Thoth with a ram's head, since the power of the faculty of which the head is the seat was denoted by the act of butting with the horns, typifying the use of the intellect, whether for attack or defense. The command to cover the holy place of the tabernacle with a ram's fleece implied that the mysteries of the Spirit were accessible only to the understanding. The mighty walls of the Jericho of doubt are represented as falling at the sound of ram's horns after being encompassed during the typical period of 7 days. The narrative of the previous entry of the spies into the stronghold through the agency of a woman is similarly designed to exalt the understanding, the direct reference being to the intuition as essential to the understanding and therefore to the resolution of doubt. The assignment to this woman of the vocation of the Magdalene accords with the mystical usage of regarding the soul as impure during the term necessary for her education of her association with matter. When this is finished, she becomes virgin. One of the chief glories of Hermes, his conquest of the 100-eyed Argus, denotes the victory of the understanding over fate, because Argus represents the power of the stars over the soul that has yet to gain her freedom. For that reason, Hera, the queen of the astral spheres and tormentor of the soul thus subject, is said to have placed the eyes of Argus in the train of the peacock, a pair of which birds pulled her chariot. The story of the slaying of Goliath is a parable with a similar meaning, since Goliath is the outward expression of the system represented by the Philistines, the system of doubt and denial, which finds its inevitable outcome in materialism. Thus, the killing of Goliath signifies the defeat of materialism by the understanding. And in addition, David is represented on arraying himself for the conflict, as declining the king's weapons or arms of the exterior reason and choosing a smooth stone out of a brook, this being the philosopher's stone of a pure spirit, a firm will, and a clear perception, such as is attained only through the secret operation of the soul, of which the brook is the emblem. Such a stone also is that which, cut out without hands, breaks into pieces the giant image of Nebuchadnezzar. The reward for David's achievement, the possession of the king's daughter, the usual outcome of such heroic adventure, denotes the attainment by the conqueror of the highest gifts and graces, the daughter of Saul, or the outer reason, being the inner reason or intuitive faculty developed from the man and constituting the woman in the man. Hence, David's subsequent history in relation to Michal, the daughter of Saul, implies a spiritual regression on the soul's part. Similar reasons dictated the selection of a dog as specially sacred to Hermes, and his representation as the dog-headed Anubis, the intelligence and faithfulness of this animal making it an apt type of the understanding as the special friend of man. Raphael, the Hebrew equivalent of Hermes, and like him, called the physician of souls, is also represented as accompanied by a dog when traveling with Tobias. And the name of the special associate of Joshua, the final leader of the chosen people into the promised land of their spiritual perfection, namely Caleb, signifies a dog and implies the necessity of intelligence for the successful quest of salvation. Similarly, rams and the fat of rams were used as symbolic terms to denote the offering most acceptable to God. The intention of these terms was to teach that man ought to dedicate to the service of God all the powers of his mind, raised to their highest perfection, and by no means to ignore or suppress them. Thank you for listening to this, the final reading of my series of 9 readings from The Perfect Way, which perhaps will encourage you to have a go at reading the original work for yourselves. Thank you.